I'll talk a bit about the new project I'm working on at the moment. I'm taking as my starting point for the project the monadology by Leibniz. It's his outline of his metaphysical system. So in different ways I'm using that text as a starting point, and sometimes branching off from it. I'm not fixed to it, but it's the thing that's sort of seeded all the ideas for the show. So the fundamental idea of his metaphysics is that the reality underlying everything we see and experience is the monad, which is a sort of an atom, but it's immaterial, and there are an infinite number of them, and they all perceive in some way. They contain a kind of perception or a proto-consciousness. So that's how he explains how consciousness is in the world, that it's actually pervading every part of the world, and the physical world is sort of secondary to that. It arises from that, the world we see. He wrote this at the time when microscopes were a new thing, so people were looking at bits of matter and discovering bacteria and microorganisms. So I think that idea of that when you look further into a body, an animal's body or a human body or a piece of animal material, it's actually made of smaller animals, smaller living things. And he called these things animalcules, these light molecules, but I suppose a molecule with a soul, like a molecule that has makes choices, maybe. So that, in a roundabout way, that's a way in for me to working with objects and demonstrating what objects do and maybe what objects want to do, as a way of empathising with them, a way of relating my body or a sort of living body with these inanimate, we think, pieces of material. It's a way of acknowledging that we're the same, that maybe we're the same in some way, we're built of the same thing, or that the lines, the boundaries between those categories aren't particularly fixed, aren't particularly concrete. So that's one thing about the monadology. The other thing is the way it's written, the structure of the text itself, and it's written as 90 very short propositions, numbered propositions, starting with this first proposition that the fundamental thing is the monad, which is, he doesn't really go into what that is at that point, except that it's a simple, it's something that can't be broken down anymore. So it's something that can't undergo change or can't be affected by outside things. And then the propositions from that, it just sort of leads from one to the next in this very elegant way, a very reasonably understandable way, considering it's a philosophical text. I could almost understand most of it. And he leads you to this very beautiful vision of this sort of universe that's alive. Every part of it's alive. And there's something about that structure that I responded to and like, because there's a sense of revealing happening where you start with a very, very small proposition, and then the ramifications of that proposition widen until you're given the full picture that's seeded in that one idea. So that's my structure for my show in some way. It'll start with something very small, a small little vision of something, and somehow that vision will be the seed for a whole room full of stuff going on, which will be the room full of stuff going on will be a kind of body in itself, and all the little things within it are also bodies, are like a system of organs, and they're all interdependent. And the smallest bit that you pick up and maybe demonstrate or investigate will be a body in its own right, have its own autonomy, but it also forms part of this one big body, which is the room and the audience and the operators, me and the other people demonstrating. And then the final thing I suppose to talk about would be a relationship to an image, which I find slightly problematic. How I understand the body and the object as something that can blur, and there can be a conversation between. The image, I never know where that exists when I'm working, because I think of things as processes. So I'm interested in vision, the act of seeing and interpreting. And maybe for me the image is something that happens later, or never quite happens, because it's always changing. It's always subject to being retranslated for the audience after the event. That's the end.